You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. It's that time of year again, time to have a look at the more interesting camera and lens announcements of a year few of us will probably ever forget. Some great cameras and lenses came to market this year, and with us to talk about them is Kevin Rickert, who is the Camera and Lighting Senior Sales Trainer for B&H. Kevin instructs our pro photo staff on all of the features and specs of the new cameras, often getting them in his hands well before anybody else does. And again, big thing with Kev is that he has to know the stuff to train the staff so that when you go into B&H, you could actually get good information. Kevin, welcome back to the show. You're a repeat performer here.
Thank you. It's good to be back and do this 2020 recap of all the fun cameras that some I got to play with and some I didn't get to play with. But of course, I trained my people on them. So very exciting. Thanks.
Cool stuff. Before we get into a list of the cameras and lenses that we all pitched in our little ideas, we're going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite camera of 2020? Just curious.
My favorite camera of 2020, I would say would be, I'm really fond of the Fujifilm X100V, simply because it's a nice 23 millimeter, which is a 35 millimeter equivalent lens. Mm-hmm. It's a perfect travel camera. But on the flip side of that, what I think was the most important camera of the year when it comes down to the grand scheme of things, I would say it was probably the Canon EOS R5 and R6 releases. They kind of made mirrorless cameras more, put them more on the map in 2020. So now it looks like a more serious thing for everybody.
It sort of sealed the deal, I guess. I mean, Sony, took it and ran with it and pretty much owned it. I mean, Fuji's been doing their share of it. But the fact that Canon and Nikon were kind of like, sticking their toes in the water for the longest time, this kind of just, it sealed the deal. Everything is all credible now. It is a mirrorless world, and DSLRs are fading from the picture, as also a lot of other little cameras. But yeah, this seems to be the direction of going, and they did a great job with it too. Both cameras, I was involved with the intro of them when we did the videos and all the reviews, and they are really nice cameras. They do perform as advertised.
Yeah, that they do. It's basically Canon stopped dipping their toe in the water, and they kind of went just cannonballed into it, and it really put ripple effect into the whole landscape of photography. So now Canon has a nice high resolution 45 megapixel camera with the R5 that does 8K for those who want to do that, and the R6 is no slouch at all. 20 megapixels, does the 4K 60, and both are just the lenses that come out with them came out with those cameras is very nice. I believe they came out with at the same time the 600 and the 800. Those interesting f11 lenses that are out there. So basically, now you have people who couldn't afford a $12,000 lens. Now they could get it for more better price. So
did you have an opportunity to use either of those lenses?
No, I didn't. They only sent me the R5 and R6 to play around with. So
okay. See, I was able to use both the 6 and the 800, and they're incredible. I've used a lot of really long lenses in my time, and these were so easy to use. They're light. The image stabilization works beautifully, and the small apertures on them, like f11 or something like that, it doesn't matter. It's like it used to be that if it was like a mirror lens would be f8 or a long lens would be 5.6, and you look through the finder, it was dim. But with electronic finders, it brightens it up. It makes it easier to use. And the image stabilization and the autofocus technology, it just nails it. The camera is just, both the cameras and those lenses are really, really amazing. But I think we're jumping ahead of ourselves. At least I am. Right now.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's take the cameras for a little bit.
Let's throttle back here a bit.
It's incredible that those two lenses are kind of the main talking points of the year. I think it's great, and we're definitely going to get to them. But while we're on Canon, and as you were trashing DSLRs, we should mention the EOS 1DX Mark III came out. And
I wasn't trashing them. I was saying that, they're taking seconds. And by the way, there's always going to be room for them, and there are people who still prefer them, and they do have their reason for being here. It's but if you look at the big picture. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think the 1DX Mark III and the Nikon equivalent, the D6, right? I mean, these are maybe showing what you're getting at, Alan, which is that these cameras are now going to be just for the specialists, right? Just for the sports photographers and maybe some of the wildlife photographers who want that kind of camera. And although a lot of them are also switching to the mirrorless. But
these still remain the toughest of the tough cameras too, if I'm not mistaken. I think these flagship cameras are really built for it. So again, if you're in the kind of environment, say you're an industrial photographer, annual reports, or even sports where you get banged around a lot, these are still the cameras you might want to look at for sure.
And their connectivity have improved. I mean, they're kind of making themselves for what they are, people who need to get news photos back to their editors immediately, and of course be tough and strong and fast and all those things. So
the thing about the mirrorless is now that it gave the opportunity for Nikon, Canon to reinvent their lens mounts. So now you have better optics, which is really nice, especially coming from like Nikon didn't change their mount since like the 60s. This is the first time when they came out of the Z mount. So it's a little bit of evolution there when it comes down to optics. So, which is nice.
Well, how about we throw this out because we're still on Canon. I guess the PowerShot zoom camera, which is totally in the opposite direction, but that's made the list of a few people.
But it's a great product, though.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a monocular camera. So yeah, so you have your zoom built into it. I believe it was like a 100 to 400. Then you have fixed digital zoom inside of there. So when we get back around to doing live sports and such like that, or someone wants to go walking through the woods and do some wildlife like shots and stuff like that, it's a nice pocketable camera. Probably the most unique camera of the year, honestly. 12 megapixels. So. Yeah.
I was saying for like birding, like hiking and birding and things like that. It's just, it really is ideal. It's because it's so easy to carry. I think it's the form factor is really what changed it. You think about it. If you took the same specs and put it into a typical PowerShot package, the typical form factor of a point and shoot, we wouldn't be talking about it.
True.
Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
Oh,
You're definitely right on that.
Yeah.
So I think this is interesting. The technology there's nothing unique about the technology, but it's the package that they put it into. And all of a sudden people go, oh, look at that. That's kind of fun. I could slip that into my pocket easily. I was thinking, we put up a couple of bird feeders in the past 6 months, like a lot of people did. And this would have been a kind of a cool thing to have because every once in a while, especially with migrations going on, we got everything from hummingbirds to, bald eagles flying around over the house here. So there's all kinds of stuff and could have gotten some interesting shots probably. Next year, I'll add it to my little list. There you go.
Let's jump over to Leica then, because I think that's what everyone here wants to talk about. And they put out 3 really interesting cameras this year. And I know, Alan,
that's funny. You have on everyone's list. I don't think it was on my list, and I love the camera, but it wasn't on my list.
Which one? The M10R? Well, you had the
M10R, yes. Yeah. Okay, and it's a great camera. I'm not knocking it at all, but it was not on my list. I think everybody else threw it on there. And it is a significant camera. I had a brief time to use the camera, and that was after I already had an M10 monochrome. So it was interesting to compare, to shoot the color and the black and white side by side. I think the most significant thing about the camera is the fact that forever they were 24 megapixel as a cap. Even though 24 megapixel is more than enough for like 99% of any of the photographs that most of us do, all right? It's nice to know that there's a larger sensor there. Just, again, for me, it's reasons of cropping or tonality, whatever you want to call it. But I think it was nice that Leica was able to jump up a bit and kind of get up there in the megapixel race with everybody else. And it makes a difference,
Within Leica, the most intriguing one, I think, besides the M10R is also like the Q2 monochrome, which just announced. So once again, like that camera being a fixed lens, 46.7 megapixels with the 28 millimeter 1.7 lens, but the fact that the sensor is now monochromatic, there's no color filter array on there. Just the sharpness, the dynamic range you could get from that camera is to be phenomenal. It's just one of those cameras you could, have just throw in not your pocket per se, but throw in a bag and go travel, take some street shots with that, and have that look that just everything monochromatic, but it just pops and sings a certain way.
It does. I worked on the video and the written review of it for B&H Explorer. So I had it for about a week before it was actually announced, and we did the video, we did stills and everything. And I found that camera to be absolutely wonderful. And by the way, you can't fit it into a coat pocket, or if you have cargo pants, you'll be kind of lumpy, but you can do it. But the thing is, the weight and the size, the form factor is really gorgeous. The lens is phenomenal. It was made for that camera. You won't find that lens anywhere else. And the sensor in both Q2 and the Q2 monochrome are designed specifically to go with that lens. It's a nice closed system. Everything is optimized for everything else within the package. And you mentioned the image quality. I used to shoot 4x5, and I have high res scans of a lot of my 4 or 5 black and white negatives. And I opened up those images and I shot side by side of a lot of pictures with the M10 monochrome and the Q2 monochrome, which is even higher resolution. It's like shooting 4 or 5. It's not an exaggeration. I look at the structure of the image at 100%, and it's really kind of amazing. And yes, you can do amazing black and white conversions from any of the decent color digital cameras, but there's an edge you have here because of the fact the pixels aren't being, separated by RGB. Everything is gray tone. So when you have a 40 megapixel sensor recording or a 46 megapixel sensor, and you compare it to a, say, 40 or 46 megapixel RGB sensor converted, it's sort of like triple the resolving power and tonality because there's nothing being divided between the colors. Everything is going to one channel. So it's a big difference. And if you look at pictures on Instagram, you won't see a big difference. But if you look at the actual files and you make prints and you're serious about black and white, you really can't beat these cameras. You really, really can't.
Agreed. On that note of German high-end brands who have come out with cameras this year in some shape or form, the ZX1 from Zeiss, even though it was announced in 2018, finally popped out of the ether and showed up for 2020. And that is an intriguing camera. It's a bit different from things that we've encountered in the past, considering that it's a big touchscreen in the back, fixed lens camera, 37 megapixels roughly. But interesting thing about it, it has Adobe Lightroom CC integrated into the unit. So if you're out and about shooting, oddly enough, instead of using a smartphone or a tablet, you could actually edit your photos on the back of the screen on this camera from Zeiss, which is a very interesting entry into the foray of cameras out there.
Have you had a chance to use it? I mean, I've just seen pictures of it. I have never handled it.
I've seen pictures of it. I saw it close between the pane of glass when it was first announced.
Yeah.
But
my nose print was right after yours on that glass. I know.
Like there's so many nose prints on this piece of glass. They had to hire somebody to wipe it.
That's why I get there early.
But yeah, it's interesting on how that one, because that one actually has a leaf shutter too. So high sync speeds you could get from that. But it's a camera that has a 4-inch touchscreen on the back, fixed lens, Adobe Lightroom built into it, basically using a version of Android, and then an internal 512 SSD, so you don't need memory cards. So the idea is like you go out and do everything on just one piece of one camera, basically. So it's a very intriguing concept when it comes down to it. And everybody thought it would be vaporware, like, oh, they just announced this and then it's going to be one of those prototypes that never actually came out. But actually they did it, which is kind of remarkable because I was looking kind of precarious there for a bit from Zeiss.
Vaporware? That's a phrase I haven't heard. It's a nice little...
vaporware, meaning... Yeah,
I get it, but is that a phrase that's out there a lot, or and I just missed it, or
it is, yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
all right. Cool.
Basically, like let's announce this, and then it doesn't pop up, and then vaporware. Gotcha. Usually with software, sometimes hardware, like the Nikon. What was the name of that? That's the DL series from Nikon.
That was that's a perfect example. Right. That term was used a lot for that. Yes. Right.
So my question earlier, and maybe this is something we could hold for the end when we kind of wrap up the year, but with Leica, going to these heavy megapixel cameras and of course Canon and Nikon, both with their mirrorless high res options, is there a pixel race starting up again? I kind of thought we were out of that, but or is this just kind of the technology? The technology is now available to everybody and a lot easier. Any thoughts on this idea of high megapixel cameras again?
Yeah. That's a good question, because I think that we're kind of past that now. I think what it is that every manufacturer will have a high resolution option now. So it's like, all right, just like, for example, Canon, the R5, R6, here's your 45 megapixel high resolution one. And here's your more modest mid 20s, 20 megapixel option. Same thing with Nikon. You have the D850, you have the D780. Sony's been doing it. So I think it's more of just how the industry is aligning itself now. So you have a high resolution option for those who need it. Then you have the one that is like more video centric if you need it. Then you have one that is more modest. You have it. Sony does it. Panasonic does it. Canon's doing it now. Nikon does it with the Z6, Z7. So I think it's less of a megapixel race. I think more, if you notice how the industry has been trending, now you see a lot of like autofocus. It's an autofocus race now. Like, how many points of autofocus does this have? How much coverage does it has? Does it have eye detect? Does it have animal detect? Does it do this? Does it do that? So I think that's the trend that is kind of going. And then beyond that, I believe like a lot of it is, it's kind of subtle, but you see it popping up, is like the machine learning AI that these cameras are starting to get now. I believe that's the next frontier. Panasonic has a little bit of that. Sony does. They have some AI mechanisms in there to make AF a little bit better, or things that are built into the camera to make it like recognize scenes better, to put the proper settings. And it's just that's like the next step in everything. Because I think, considering that sensors are coming from maybe one or two places these days, maybe three, but I think we're past that point of like the megapixel race. I think it's becoming more of other things, because it kind of reminds me of late 90s, early 2000s, when there's like the megahertz race. And then some people don't talk about megahertz with computers anymore. They just say, oh, this is i5, i6. That's about it. But for the most part, I think we're looking at more of what can your camera do to make it easy when it comes to autofocus and such like that. And also, there's a video race too, if you notice, who could be 8K or who could do 10-bit, things of that nature. So
Two points from what you just said. First of all, the autofocus is an interesting point, the autofocus race. One of the things I noticed with the R5 and R6 when I was playing around with them is that when you put it into maximum frames per second and you watch through the finder as you just hold your finger down on the shutter button, all the focus points, you see them popping up on the screen, all little points that are coming into focus. And one of the things I realized that as I'm using this camera is that I don't think I missed any pictures. I'm photographing, guys throwing around frisbees and chasing stuff and all kinds of things. And that camera was right on top of the action. It had my subject, was able to track the frisbee. You can see these little green dots going across the screen as I'm shooting, showing where the focus is. So that is definitely part of it. I mean, I was shooting knowing that the pictures were coming out. There was no doubt about it. And that's kind of an interesting, kind of feeling to have when you're out there. And the other thing we were talking about is the megapixel race. I think early on when we started to go from, 8 megapixel, I remember I went with just 3 megapixel, then went to 6, and then it was a big deal when we hit 10 and 12. And one of the problems was that as you squeeze more and more pixels into a fixed area, 24 by 36 millimeter, whatever the size of the sensor is, the smaller the sensor, the less dynamic range you have, the less highlight detail or the shadow detail, and the midsection starts to suffer too. And that was a big thing early on. But now with firmware upgrades and software and all kinds of other advanced technologies, there are ways of putting this so-called lost data back into it or maintain it without losing it. Again, I'm not a technical guy, but what they're doing is they're managing the loss. They're being able to expand the resolving power without having the dynamic range suffer of the image. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're now seeing, now we're going into 40, 50, 60 megapixel, and it'll be 100, whatever it is. And I think we'll start picking that up as the technology behind it enables us to maintain a really good layer of image quality. Because if the image quality goes down, it doesn't matter how sharp it is. If there's no highlights and shadows, who cares? So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, definitely. We're getting better sensors, better processing image pipelines involved to pull out the dynamic range from the sensor. Which, when it comes down to sensors, a lot of, like, when it comes to image formats, what were the two image formats that we've had for ages now? When it comes, if you buy a DSLR, you have RAW and JPEG, right? When DX Mark III comes out, they added a new codec for stills, basically the HEIF files, and then all of a sudden you have these pop up with different manufacturers now. So basically, that's it's a compressed file, just like a JPEG, but you have more color. You have 10-bit of color instead of 8-bit. So that's something to keep an eye on as we go on. And if you notice, like, a lot of the industry is going towards a way that, especially the Zeiss camera that I just mentioned, the industry is trying to compete or supplement with the smartphone. And that new format that I mentioned was one of the first cameras to actually have that cameras, and I put that in air quotes for you, is basically the iPhone. That was one of the first ones to use that format. People are like, what is this weird file? Basically, smaller size, but you get 10 bits of color, and it's just a more efficient, which they borrowed that from the video codec H.265. But now you have cameras out there that take JPEG, this new codec, and RAW all mixed in. So now it's something to keep in mind when cameras come out, you're doing your editing, that you have another codec to deal with, a format.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Let's jump over to Fujifilm, and I know, Kevin, you started off mentioning the X100V.
So the X100V is the fifth one, V for 5, Roman numeral. So
thank you.
Little thing there, but yeah. So it's because the first one was letterless.
Right.
It's weird because it's S was for second, T for third, F for 4, then V for 5. I guess you couldn't do.
I never knew that.
Yeah, they couldn't do F twice. So
I thought it was Victor Hasselblad. You got me totally confused here. Okay, no.
but yeah, Fuji was pretty, like, because obviously we had the whole middle of the year was kind of just like this big cloud, so we didn't really, like, a lot of things were coming out. But Fuji came out this year with the XT4, the X100V. Then it came out with the XT200, which was like an entry-level camera, which we're not going to go into that much. But basically, then it came out a month or two ago with the XS10, which is confusing because they added another line when they have a lot of lines right now. But the thing about it is this is like a new series from Fuji, which is like a blend of the XT30 series, let's say, and the XT4. Since it has image stabilization, it's 26 megapixels with the same processor and sensor as the XT4. 6 stops of stabilization in there. But the thing about it is that it's really entry level. This is Fuji's foray into compete with like the Sony A6000 series and such like that. It has no weather sealing because it's a sub $1,000 camera, and it's a more straightforward design. We're used to the Fujis having all these knobs to replicate a film camera and such like that. This one is just a standard PSAM mode dial up top, and this is just for people who, like the Fuji colors, but they don't want to be fiddling around with a lot of those knobs. So I think it's an interesting addition to the Fuji lineup. It's very full lineup that Fuji has. I feel like they do APS-C the best because there's a nice balance between almost the quality of the full frame, but at a smaller form factor, so you're not feeling that full frame weight per se. So it's a very nice balanced system. And obviously, if you want something better than full frame, Fuji has a GFX line. So if you want your 100 megapixels or your 50 megapixel medium format camera, they have them.
I always thought that's brilliant, the way they kind of like just skipped the quote unquote full frame format and went from APS-C to medium format. Kind of a brilliant marketing thing. I also have to commend them. Fuji, first of all, Fujifilm is one of the few companies where you could identify the camera by the images that it takes. There's a definite Fujifilm look that is unique. It's very, very brilliant, saturated color. It's not what you'd call natural color, although it looks amazing. People love it, but they nailed it on that. Also, a lot, especially with the X100 V5, whatever we want to call it, the form factor is so Leica M, and then they match it with a 35 millimeter equivalent lens, and they're really harking back to the original Leica M3 kind of look, the same M look that exists today. But it's a smaller digital camera and a lot more affordable. But it just looks cool. And even the little details on it, they just go into a nice retro look about it, but they do it well. And then the technology is brilliant with it, with the finders and the lenses and the colors. So it's a great package that Fuji puts out. All in all, it really is.
And I do like that. If you go back to the finder on the X100 series, what I like is like the hybrid finder.
Yeah.
So it's like electronic. You click it again and it's optical. Then you click it again and it's both. It has a little corner that's actually like digital, and then the rest is optical. So it's very interesting EVF that they have there. It makes it fun to shoot. I think that's what the Fujifilm line is all about, is about harkening back to shooting film like Velvia and stuff like that, and being just like, hey, we want to make this fun. And I wonder what the numbers are of people who shoot with Fujifilm and actually try film. That's an interesting thought process that they have there. So
yeah, because you could actually select film stocks of Fujifilm. And then go out and shoot that stock and see how it compares to what you're doing digitally. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's done that. That could be an interesting. I just got an idea for a story. Okay.
All right, how about we jump to
That's a
Sony
good
then?
idea, actually.
Obviously, the A7S III has gotten a lot of chatter. I'm kind of curious about the A7C, though. Any thoughts on that, Kevin? Or any other Sony camera that you guys want to put on your list for this year?
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, so Sony's big thing this year was obviously the long-awaited A7S III, which is probably undoubtedly the best 4K recording camera in the mirrorless lineup right now. There's probably another one that we can mention later. But for the most part, everybody was waiting for that to come out. I played around with that camera. It is exactly what you think it is. It's great. Its autofocus is great. Video quality is great. You can record for long periods of time because it's a longer battery, and plus it doesn't overheat. But the A7C was an interesting camera because everybody was thinking that they were coming out with a budget-minded camera to compete with, like, let's say, the Canon RP and stuff like that, like a $1,000 full-frame camera. But Sony did surprise us and came out with the A7C. Now, what that is, basically, to put it simply, is a rehoused A7 III. And so it has a lot of the same internals. It does not use the new menu that you'll find on the A7S III. It's the same traditional menu that Sony's been putting on the cameras since their full-frame mirrorlesses came out. It is not definitely a slouch. It's very good camera, but it's aimed for vloggers. So it has a flip screen, a form factor that's more reminiscent to the A6000 series of cameras. Video is great. It has HLG in there, has stabilization in there, which was a feat of engineering that they were able to put it in a camera so small. And they also came out with a new kit lens with that. But the idea is it's smaller to match that camera size. It's a 28 to 60 millimeter lens, and it's very small, and it's able to match the size of the camera. So that's two things that Sony came out with towards the back half of the year. They also came out with a few lenses. Like they have earlier this year, they had the 12 to 24 millimeter, the 2.8. They also came out with the vlogger camera, the pocketable one, which is basically a 1-inch 20 megapixel camera, the ZV-1. So it's a nice little camera. Throw it in your pocket. Does your external recording, but it's good to just jump on like a little handheld grip and just, if you have any vlogs, you could use that camera. But yeah, the A7C was probably like the surprise of the list because it's priced close to the A7 III itself. Now, for people who want that flip screen but want sub $2,000, that's the camera for them. So we'll see how that does.
Okay. Cool. And let's jump over to Nikon then. Anything to mention about those? The Z7 II is the higher res version. They seem to be very well received by Nikon shooters. Maybe they didn't get as much attention as the Canon R5 did, but I don't know.
I know a couple of people that are using them and they love them.
Yeah. Any particular thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the Nikon for the most part was kind of in the shadow in the whole mirrorless aspect of it because, Canon users are going to be Canon users, and they jumped to the R5 and R6. But Nikon, they came out with the Z6 and Z7, maybe 2 years ago, I think 2018, they came out with those. And they were well received, but there were some issues that people had with them, like, oh, why is it only one card slot? So, between here and then, Nikon did come with firmware updates for the Z6 and Z7 that made them a bit better when it comes to autofocus. And now they came out with their full-fledged the second generation for those. So the Z6 II and Z7 II, you have faster AF. They added 2 card slots, one a compact CF Express Type B and a SD UHS-2 slot, 4K 60. It'll be available on a firmware update on one of the other models, and they have a proper vertical grip now for those 2 cameras. So this was a nice refresh to the line. So basically, you could say like the Z6 and Z7, the original ones, were just like we said before, toe in the water type of deal. Right. But now they're fleshing out their roadmap for lenses. They have more substantial cameras and 2 memory card slots now, because everybody used to get on other brands for only having 1 card slot. Now Nikon has 2 card slots there. And I think we saw Nikon kind of waking up when they introduced the Z5 earlier in the year, which is basically, for all intents and purposes, a D750 in a mirrorless body. So nice entry-level Z-mount camera there from Nikon. But the Z6 II and the Z7 II are very good updates that Nikon needed to release in 2020 to kind of keep relevant these days.
And I think that also leads to or gets back to our point earlier about, these 2 manufacturers are now fully on into mirrorless, and there's no going back. However, let's go back, because the D780 also came out, and you just mentioned the D750. Now, I imagine it's going to get overlooked a lot, but to me, the D750 has been, my go-to cameras for the past 5 years, and I'm considering getting the D780, at least one of them, to have with. I mean, it's an update. Maybe not a lot of bells and whistles, nothing too fancy, but I'm happy.
It's refinement.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. It's they refined. They basically took what 750 was a great camera. It was one of my good friends has one and just loves it. But the thing is like they needed to do like a little bit of an update to it. So it's still 24 megapixels. Has better autofocus, and they added a lot of the features that. It's funny how like a lot of these brands are mixing their features now, like a witch's cauldron now. So you have like the N-Log and HLG, the 10-bit video, which basically the way I explained it to my sales staff was basically the D780 is an update that kind of looks like a Z6 in a DSLR form factor. So basically, if you like that DSLR body, more robust, and you just like the features that are coming out, that the D780 is a very good modern DSLR for Nikon shooters.
I have a question maybe about this idea. I mean, if we're at this point, and let's say you're a Nikon shooter, for example, are you going to jump over to the mirrorless and start investing in the new glass? Or are you going to maybe take it slow, get an adapter, continue to use your old glass, maybe start slow with one of the mirrorless cameras, or just stick with DSLR, go with a D780 or whatever happens to be your choice and go that way. Any thoughts on that? And that goes for any camera line, but
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because I'll remember when I mentioned about like how these brands going to mirrorless kind of gives them a chance to update their optics. The thing about Nikon's optics is that the actual diameter of the mount is very small. So that kind of limits them as far as lens design. So when you went from the F mount to the Z mount, you have a larger mount size in the back. The diameter is larger. So now you can get your optics to be much better. So when it comes down to it, I feel that if someone was going from DSLR to mirrorless in the Nikon aspect of it, since Nikon develops the F mount and they develop the Z mount and they have their own adapter, I believe it should be less of an issue taking your time with it, because you may have a lot of these lenses have like the characteristics that you like, and their adapter works really well with the autofocus. You're not losing any functionality when it comes down to it. So I personally would take my time if I need to migrate to a mirrorless camera and just pick the lenses that come out, and when you get to a certain lens that like this lens is sharper than what I had before, that's when you start to pick and choose what focal length you choose on the Z mount side of things. When it comes down to like other brands like Canon kept their same lens mount diameter, just have more contact. So with the flange distance that's involved with the camera, they can make the back part of the glass closer to the sensor, which is optically better. But same thing, the adapters work really well for the Canon system as well. So if you're going to do first-party adapters, like Canon lenses made by Canon for Canon camera, you lose hardly any features on that. And it's a good way to migrate as long as the adapters are good. If you're doing like cross-branding, that's when it starts to get a little bit tricky. Like a lot of people who migrated to Sony years ago were going from like Canon or Nikon, and that's when you had a lot of these adapters that works with this lens, but this lens not so much, and you had a lot of issues on that. But if you go from within the same brand, and now you actually can, because Nikon and Canon are both on board with mirrorless, you can have an easier time, and you can take your time migrating from system to system within that brand.
That's great.
That's really
Thank
good
you.
advice. I think you just summed that up really, really well. And I'll just add a little note about with lens adapters. Don't skimp on them. I've gone through a lot of different adapters, and I'm not going to say that some of the inexpensive ones are horrible, because truth of the matter is I have a couple of $20, $25 adapters that are actually quite good, and they're tight, and the image quality is wonderful. But I have found, on the most part, the better adapters, the more precision ones, are a better fit. There's no wiggle, and the image quality just corner to corner, it just seems to hold up, because you have to keep in mind, if just one end of an adapter on the front end or the back end is just a little bit out of true, not quite true, your image quality is not going to be there. Part of your frame is going to not be sharp, especially at wider apertures.
Very true. Very true. Pick wisely, basically.
Yeah, and again, it's a kind of investment where it's going to be with you for a while. I mean, especially if you're using these, this is a good thing. It's an intermediary, so that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Okay, let me jump real quickly to mention just the Ricoh GR3 Street Edition. We won't talk about it too much, because from what I understand, it's basically just a GR3 with a little different look. They have this metallic gray body.
Racing stripes.
Racing stripes, exactly. But those cameras have their followers, and I've actually kind of want to try them out.
When using the monochrome, the Q2, one of the things that came to mind was that I think it would be amazing for Leica if they came out with a pocket camera, a point and shoot. I mean, a small sensor, monochrome, something along the line of a Ricoh GR3, but a little digital monochrome camera in that form factor, and keep it to like, 1,000, 1,200, somewhere around that. Just
I'd buy it.
Keep that in mind, and let's move on.
No, I like the idea.
I'm waiting.
No, I think it's a great idea. So the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark III, any thoughts?
So Olympus cameras are really well sealed. I always usually would recommend them for people who don't want a full frame and they need reach, because now your 100 millimeter lens is actually a 200 millimeter lens. Your 400's an 800. So basically, if you need to be shooting things far away and you don't want to get that Canon PowerShot zoom, and you want something with that's really quick, it's the EM1 series is very good. At 20 megapixels, micro four thirds sensor, 121 point autofocus, 60 frames per second if you put it in a certain mode. So really good. And plus, it probably has rating wise, when it comes down to image stabilization, you have 7 stops. So yeah, if you're going to be doing birding, sports, and you don't mind micro four thirds sensors, this is really good.
I think you summed up the market for that pretty well, actually. And I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of their lenses are equally waterproof compared to the body. It's not like the body's waterproof, but the lenses are iffy. The glass is equally sealed. I think in most cases, I'm not going to say all of them, but I believe most cases they are. And that also makes a big difference. You can just go out there in any kind of weather. And you do get a lot of bang for your buck from Olympus. The technology that is in these cameras is really pretty remarkable. Again, great camera. It's not a point and shoot. It's a real deal camera that could do some pretty good imaging.
Yeah, basically, for people who are familiar with before this release was the the EM1X, basically a lot of those features were just boiled into the EM1 Mark III. So a lot of what people want, like the Live ND and the handheld high-res mode, made it from that camera into the EM1 Mark III. These EMs are just like, as you said, alphabet soup. Jeez.
It's like,
yeah, there's a lot there. And I guess are we going to mention like big stories from 2020 for camera world? Because Olympus has one with the fact that they
go for it.
Yeah. So Olympus, one of the big things coming from Olympus is how they basically sold their imaging sector to Japan Industrial Partners, which are known for taking up the Vio brand as well. So Olympus themselves are not going to be putting out Olympus cameras anymore. They sold off their imaging line to a different company. So who knows how that'll change Olympus down the road. The Vio brand is still pretty good. So there's hope for them. Olympus is obviously big in the medical field. So that kind of helps them out a bit. But you have brands like Nikon, which they're not diversified like Canon is. Canon has copiers and medical scopes and stuff like that. So we'll see how it goes for Olympus and such like that. But we'll see. It's one of the oldest camera brands out there, so we'll see how they do. And I'm hopeful for it. Speaking about diversified brands, Panasonic.
Panasonic. Good segue. Yeah, please. Let's talk about the DC S5.
Yes. So this was a camera I played around with. I was kind of excited to play around with this one because this is, if anybody has shot with the S1, the S1H, the S1R, they're big cameras. For a mirrorless camera, you'd be like, ooh, these are kind of big there. So finally, Panasonic has come out with something that doesn't weigh a ton per se. And it has a lot of nice features on there. It's dust and splash resistant. It is 24 megapixels, which is good enough for most people. 6.5 stops of image stabilization, dual native ISO. Has a live view composite mode, which is unique to a full frame camera. And it's not a slouch when it comes down to video. There will be a raw video update for when you put it to Atomos. We'll have DCI 4K internal when it comes down to it. But for the most part, Panasonic threw out a camera that is very well suited with their line. It is very close to looking. It probably will eat up some of their S1 sales, but honestly, I think that the S5 is a camera that Panasonic needed to come out with because they're sharing a ecosystem with Leica and Sigma. So they have to be buoyed in some way. So now you have a camera that's out there that is priced right, has a lot of good features. And it was mentioned before about how firmware updates are becoming kind of like the norm now when it comes down to cameras. So a camera that may come out today may, in fact, be better 5 months from now or 6 months from now because of the firmware updates that these brands are putting out to kind of help, squeeze out a little bit more life out of the cameras. So that's the thing about camera reviews these days is that sometimes the camera reviews are based on something that happened a year ago, and then the new firmware update comes out and changes the camera completely. So you have better features in there.
That's a really good point.
The S5 was really good. And not to be forgotten, it was kind of forgotten. Like a lot of the world became like vlogging centric, it seems, that this year. So the DC G100 was a camera, like a Micro Four Thirds camera that came out that's a microphone developed by Nokia. Basically, it's made for vlogging. It's flip screen, has 1:1, and if you want to, which Instagram doesn't use anymore, but it has that feature in there. Pretty good video, 4K 30, 4K 24, and full HD 60 vlog stabilization. It's just made for people who want to, tell their story as they're walking in their home, with the cats.
Similar to the ZV-1. The ZV-1 out of Sony was a similar idea.
Exactly. It's and for those people, I know there's a lot of people out there who, and we know all what happened with the pandemic this year in 2020, but a lot of the camera brands have put out software you could use your most recent cameras as a webcam. So if a lot of Zoom meetings are like the thing this year. A lot of like live people who are doing live streams and such like that. So most of these manufacturers, Sony, Canon, Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic, have all come out with some form of software that you could just plug in your camera to your computer via USB and use it as a camera. So that's something to note for people who are, you want to get in touch with people across the way, or maybe start a new venture with a live stream. So.
There you go. That was a good point, though, really. While we're wrapping up cameras, let's talk quickly about the Hasselblad 907X, which I believe was actually released in 2019, but I didn't hear about it until 2020. Is there anything, I mean, it's an incredible camera, and obviously it's going to bring a lot of great Hasselblad gear into the digital world. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I find it pretty interesting that they're coming out with a camera that allows older Hasselblad users to use their old gear. Because again, the big thing with this is that you could use from the 500 series cameras, the V system that they call, all of those lenses now could be used with a digital back, either with the intermediary or directly. And it's an interesting concept, I think. That's the 50C back on that camera. I think it's pretty interesting. Whether it's going to be selling or not, I don't know.
I think it's really pretty.
It's stunning. It's a stunning camera. Yeah.
Hasselblad's have that look. It's just it's really nice. It's it's interesting. It's basically a mirrorless medium format camera. Yeah, basically it bridges the gap for people who have the older film backs and such like that, and the lenses and such like that. So it's gonna be really, really intriguing to see how it does, but it is gorgeous. I saw it because I think when they announced it, it was at the same time as the X1D2. And when I saw this camera, I was like, ooh, that's pretty.
Yeah.
iPhone 12 Pro, maybe that's the last camera on our list. I don't know. I'm only including it because I know someone else is going to want us to include it. But
I have one thing we threw in that was announced, but let's talk about that. Has anyone used it?
Not me.
It's like I don't need a new phone yet. I've been just reading a lot of write-ups on the iPhone Pro Max. Jesus names. Right. iPhone Pro Max, because that one they added a little bit of a larger image sensor to one of the modules on there, and it has sensor shift stabilization. So interesting thing about it is that it is when I get into the whole computational photography type deal that you have a brain doing a lot of on the image pipeline. So they have the firmware update. Well, it's a firmware update. It's actually an iOS update, but you will have a Apple Pro RAW as an image format, which basically is flexibility of RAW, but a lot of the computational adjustments into that file. So because basically what would happen if it was just a RAW file, you wouldn't get those little like night mode type fixes to the image. So this is like the in-between. So I get the raw flexibility, but with the computational aspects of that the camera included. So we'll see how that goes down the road, but it's an interesting step into the whole idea when it comes down to how smartphones have basically eaten up the point and shoot market, and now it's becoming more apparent. Now you can do like Dolby HDR on the iPhone, so it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I'll get one. Not now, but like maybe when it's 15, iPhone 15, maybe. I don't know.
I'm still using an 8 Plus, and it's fine. But I'm looking forward to getting one of these cameras to see where they've gone from here. I use my iPhone a lot. I'll be the first to admit it. I think it's a great tool to have. It's always with me. And I make good use of it. And I recognize the differences between the pictures I take with my iPhone and my other quote unquote real cameras. There are differences, and they each have their place, but one does not replace the other. I think that's just something that I've come to the conclusion of, and I can live with that.
Yeah.
One other camera that's worth mentioning, I just noticed that this morning, is that Fujifilm has introduced the Fujifilm GFX 100 IR. For that is for 100 megapixel infrared imaging. They're calling it a forensic camera, but it'll also be a great landscape camera. And they also have a firmware upgrade for the GFX 100 that'll enable multi-shot functionality, so you could shoot at 100 or 400 megapixel equivalents. And same thing for the infrared camera. It'll have multi-shot functionality, so that's a big leap. If you're into crazy nosebleed resolving power, this is the way to do it. And the new camera will be out early 2021, they say, and the firmware upgrade might be available now. If not, probably about the same time. Okay, that's with the cameras. Lenses, there's just too many to talk about. So I guess the best thing to do is let's all look at the list we have here and throw out some thoughts on it. I have a couple of quick ones here. Nikon has the Nikkor Z 20mm f1.8S lens. I'm always into fast wide-angle lenses. Sony has one also that's same specs. But what I kind of noticed is kind of fun is that Nikon also has the AFS Nikkor, that 120 to 300 millimeter 2.8, f2.8E FLED SR VR. Try saying that one real fast. And what's kind of cool about the 20 millimeter lens focuses down to 7.87 inches. This new zoom, that's 120 to 300, focuses down to 2 meters at all focal lengths. The maximum magnifications on both lenses is about 1.6 or 1.9, which is interesting. You could take a 20 millimeter and a 120 to 300, and you could fill the frame with your subject close up to the same scale, but totally different pictures. In other words, the subject would be the same, but the background will be like real wide or real tight or whatever, but it'd be kind of fun to do that. Nikon, okay, that's Nikon. Canon, they came out a whole bunch of the RF series lenses when they came out with their new cameras. I used pretty much all of them. The 85 macro is wonderful. I talked about the 600 to 800 millimeter f11 IS STM super telephotos. They're amazing, absolutely wonderful. And I think the only other lenses I want to mention here, Venus Laowa, however they pronounce it, they came out with 2 macros that are kind of cool. They have a 50 millimeter 2.8 2x ultra macro APO, and that is for that's apochromatic. That's for micro 4/3. So it's a 100 millimeter equivalent lens that'll give you twice life size. And then for people who have APS-C cameras, they came out with the 60 millimeter 2x ultra macro apochromatic, and that's the equivalent of a 90 or 96 millimeter equivalent, depending on what camera you're using. So here we have 2 longer macro lenses that give you twice life size, and I think that's the ingredients for some pretty exciting imaging. And again, there's other lenses here, but I'll let other people talk about them. John, what are you interested in?
Well, you're right. There's a lot of great lenses that came out this year, and I agree on that Nikon 120 to 300 millimeter f2. That f2.8. That's looks like a great lens. But the one I want to mention is the Olympus 150 to 400 millimeter f4.5 lens, and it's a fixed f4.5 throughout the focal lengths, and it has a built-in 1.25 teleconverter. And I was able to use that lens for a review a few weeks ago, and I really love that lens. It just makes ultra telephoto photography so easy. It's incredibly light. It's water resistant, dust proof, all of those things that you need. And with that teleconverter built in, you have a range that on a micro four thirds camera goes all the way up to 1,000 millimeters in a body, in a barrel that's not much bigger than a standard 70 to 200 millimeter f2.8. Just love that lens. So any Olympus shooters out there, micro four thirds shooters out there, I'd say take a look at it. How about you, Kevin? Anything that strikes your fancy in terms of lenses this year?
Yeah, there's been a few nice releases this year. Alan mentioned like the Venus Optics. They did come out also some interesting wide-angle lenses too. They have like a 50 millimeter perspective control lens that they released. They have a full frame 9 millimeter lens that they came out with, which is really phenomenal when it comes down to just 9 millimeters on full frame. Also, there's been a few like Fujifilm that come out with the XF 50 millimeter 1.0 lens. That's like a bokeh monster when it comes down to it. For people who are doing portraits on the Fuji X system, you do have the 14 to 24 2.8 S lens from Nikon for the Z mount. That's an interesting lens since it's a wide angle lens, obviously, but with the lens that's included with it, you can actually put a 112 millimeter filter on there, which usually when you get lenses that wide, it's a very bulbous front, and you have to get this like a leaf filter or a Haida or a Nissi on there. So it was interesting that they were able to get technically a real filter on there when it comes down to it. And Sigma's has had a busy year too. They've come with an 85 for the mirrorless lines, the E mount and the L mount, and also a 100 to 400, which is really nice as well. It's smaller than most 100 to 400, so it's a good option for people who don't want to put down the money for like the first party brands like a Sony per se, and get something, because Sigma's lens quality has been really good ever since they did the Global Vision line. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to see what else comes out in the future. So
I remember when we spoke to you in the summer, Kevin, you mentioned the Pentax 85 millimeter f1.4, and I put that on my list as well as a pretty interesting lens for this year. And
I believe they're coming out with, I think they did announce development on a camera. So,
good.
Which is obviously a DSLR, but because they're the only company who hasn't come out with it. Well, they did have a mirrorless back in the day, but they're one of the few brands who are stubbornly DSLR only. So.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I hope that works for them. I hope they find that niche, and Pentaxians and others jump to them. I mean, I'm always curious, and every time I use a Pentax DSLR, I love it, and I kind of consider jumping over, but I'm just not sure it's worth it, for the investment.
Yeah, they're very, very well made. They have stabilization inside of it. They're sealed very well. Honestly, they should just come out with a film camera.
You're half joking about it. It's funny. Pentax is like Olympus. We were talking earlier about Olympus. They pack so much into the cameras, okay? And Pentax is the same way. I've handled more than a few of their flagship cameras and even second tier cameras, and it's always a great experience. The pictures are always wonderful. The glass is really, really good. And it's all a matter of branding and stuff like that. And it's so hard to hit or miss, and you got to hit it. And Pentax has always just been a bit off, but people who use it love it.
Yeah,
Rightfully so.
When you think about it, Pentax has the legacy of their name. When you think about two cameras to get started with in the film in film, Canon AE1 and then the Pentax K1000.
Yep,
and and they have that foundation of people who are buying, like me. I have a K1000 myself, and it's just these lenses still exist out there, and the SMC lenses are great, but what about 2020? They're getting beat a little bit, but hopefully, I was kind of not even joking with the film camera. I would like to see companies come up with film. Film isn't dead.
No, it's not. No.
So
just check the price of used film cameras, and you'll know it's not dead. It used to be you could buy film cameras by the pound. Now, no, a clean film camera, they're going for more than they did originally, and no one's making them anymore.
I know. Contax cameras. And look at.
That's going to be our big story for this episode in 2021. The return of film cameras from the major manufacturers could be interesting.
Okay, that's a lot of territory covered. Anybody have any last thoughts here, John, Kevin?
Well, I say for 2020, it's been a hard year for a lot of people, but the camera industry still kept on moving. We had a lot of nice cameras this year. Canon, Sony, Nikon, Panasonic, every brand contributed. And it's going to be interesting what 2021 brings when it comes down to it, because I mentioned it before, but now you're going to have this software with AI in it. So we'll see what that brings to the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually turned out to be a pretty good year for the cameras that have come out. I mean, I thought, in May, we never would be saying something like this, but there are a lot of options. And I think we did touch on some of the big picture conversations about, high megapixel cameras, of course, problems with distribution and COVID, and firmware, I think, which is also an important point that Kevin brought up, the fact that, you may buy a camera today, but it could be a different camera, next year. So, no, I think it's been an interesting year, and I'm looking forward to checking out some of the models that we've spoken about. And I hope to one day get that Leica Q2 monochrome. We'll see.
You'd love it. one last thought from me, and then we're going to sign out of here. And that is that one of my big takeaways from this year is that getting back to black and white with the monochrome. For a zillion years, I was like 99% color, and I started in black and white, and I rediscovered it, and it's really just given me just a wonderful creative boost. I really relish going out with a camera once again, more than usual, and it's just like rediscovering things, and that's always a cool thing about photography, is that there's always something that gets you to rediscover what's going on, and that's the fun part of life. Kevin, thank you once again for joining us today. It's always great having you on the show, and hopefully we'll do this again next year and the year after and hope to have you back with more insight.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me, and see you in 2021.
We should live and be well, as they say.
Yes.
Okay, if you would like to get a heads up the moment a new B&H Photography podcast goes live, it is so easy. Simply head on over to wherever you snag your podcast, type B&H Photography Podcast into the search field, and boom, you're part of the family. You can also find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. According to my driver's license, my name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.